Hello, everyone. This is the Skive Off Podcast. My name is Hullaby, and I'm so glad you have joined us. If this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. And if you're a return listener, thanks for coming back. Skive Off Podcast can be found on all popular sites such as Apple, Spotify, and for video content, check out our YouTube page. Today, I'm joined by Dade Davis. Dave is the founder and creative eye behind Civid Graphics. Dade, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I'm excited.
Good. So let's get started, kind of introduce who you are and what it is you do in your company.
Yeah, so like Rod said, I'm Dade, Civid Graphics. A lot of people ask, how do you pronounce it? It's not Sivad, it's Civid.
I always pronounce it Sivad. I thought I gave it this kind of
well, it's
mystique name.
like that. I just prefer the pronouncing like that. I don't know why. It just sounds more smooth, but it's actually my last name backwards. So a lot of people, even if I didn't know, like they wouldn't be able to put two and two together. So like when I tell them that, like they get surprised a lot. But yeah, it's my last name backwards, and I started this kind of like with an idea, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I always loved art growing up, but I also really love sports. But I eventually reached a point in my high school career where, I wasn't able to hang like with the top athletes, or I guess I was just realistic with myself, knowing like I'm probably not going to be a varsity athlete, but I still want to stay involved and still be a part of a team. So that's how kind of all this stuff took off. When I was little, I would always, you can ask my mom, she gave me the creative side, but I would always draw my favorite athletes. And even at an earlier age, I started playing around in Photoshop. It was very confusing, but I learned the ropes there. But I first got involved with like my business, on the business side, like where I really wanted to take it serious was Coach Todd Kuntz, boys basketball coach. She was looking for somebody to make game day graphics. And it was out of my comfort zone at first, but I just stepped in and started making game day graphics for them. And ever since then, it just kind of took off. My mom and dad got me a camera for Christmas, and then I started going to events here and there, and it just kind of just grew to something I could never imagine. But
So you said you started off with art. What kind of art were you in? And then, how did you develop that eye, that creativity with the art?
I don't know. I guess it just kind of came to me. I can't really pinpoint like when I started to get pretty creative, but I just always thought on the creative side, like, I don't know, like whenever I would be watching a pro sports team, I would notice the team's jerseys. Probably a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't notice, like the little things. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it came from my mom. She always took pictures when I was little, and when I was playing sports, so I kind of wanted to like do that. But I guess it just came naturally to me. I just saw things in a creative eye.
That's I was going to ask you that question. So when you look at things as you're watching sports, are you watching it from a spectator perspective, or are you watching it from that artistic perspective, which kind of, okay, how do I position for this and get ready for a shot or anticipate depending on the sport?
I think I started like that when I was first starting. Just I would like, even still now, if I'm sitting at like an Iowa football game, I'll notice a media member who has a bunch of fancy lenses that I still want, but I'll even just watch them move around the field and like what's the best angle and whatnot. But I think over time I got so used to taking pictures at games, like it was almost nice to take a break and watch as a spectator, because I rarely get those opportunities. But yeah, I still think like when I'm not cheering for a team or in it for a team, I'm looking at that small stuff that just kind of like sparks motivation for me that I could do in an edit or a style of like edit. But I don't know. I guess it's just a little bit of both. But
so you kind of said when you noticed participating in sports that maybe you weren't at that top level, were you already kind of doing the photography, or was it a case of I need to transition into something else?
It was kind of a little bit of both. I knew I ran cross country, for example, in track. Like I wasn't running the times I know I needed to, but I knew there was a way I could balance both. So I was still on the athlete side, so I knew what it was like to get my picture taken of, and I think it was important that I was on the athlete side, so I know what it's like when you have shoots and that stuff, what makes it easier. But I also knew like I wanted to be involved. Baseball, for example, was my favorite sport. I just didn't have the talent, but I absolutely love it. Like it was my first love, so I knew there was a way I had to stay involved with this stuff. So art was, I guess, just my way of showing that.
And so being an athlete, so like you said, you ran track and cross country, do you feel it gives you like, I don't want to say an edge, but a perspective that like myself or someone else who maybe has seen the sport just doesn't see, so that, hey, I know to look for this or this might happen. So now it kind of gives you kind of that extra bit of knowledge that, say, a regular photographer just wouldn't have.
For sure, yeah. I think with I guess I just know a little bit more about sports. A lot of photographers know more about like us, like senior portraits or like wedding photography. I know a lot about senior photos because I took a few of those, but like wedding photography, for example, I'm not so well versed in that. But when in terms of athletics, like I know anticipation's a big thing when it comes like to sports, like soccer, for example. When there's a team in a corner kick, you got to be ready just in case somebody puts it in the goal, right? Whereas
Right.
somebody who may not know soccer as well might not know that, or it might be a little too late. So it kind of helps me think 5 steps ahead, so I'm prepared. But it also, like, from the athlete perspective, being an athlete and a photographer taught me skills like how to work with a team and how to have a hard work ethic. But
That's good. So you said you were kind of in the art side of it, and then you transitioned over to photography. Obviously, two different forms of expression. Is there any overlap you took from that art side and the drawing you said you were doing into the photography side that you just felt like made it a natural transition?
yeah, I think I still use drawing to this day. I don't do it for fun, but because it's just not my strength. I'm very impressed by people who can draw because they're patient. I just don't have the patience. But I still use it to plan out my edits. I use it to write down note or like draw notes. But I just think like that crossover between athletics and art was really where I learned like I might have a talent in this and I should keep on doing this.
Yeah. So, do you remember your first project?
Drawing or like photography or
For photography, for when you first said, you know what, I think I might go out and give this a try.
yeah, I think it might have been because as there's kind of a mix up because like I took a few like just like for fun like pictures of my brother playing soccer, but I think the first real project where I was thinking as a photographer and just doing it seriously was it was a mid-season basketball game in January right after Christmas when I got my camera and the photos were pretty bad, but I've come a long ways.
Okay, so that's funny, and I wanted to talk to you about when you say those photos were pretty bad. When you look back at now, like, what do you see? Do you see like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Or do you kind of see like, okay, maybe the foundation was there and you had something to grow on?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the foundation. I feel like photography is something that you can't sit in a classroom and learn. You have to go out and do. If I didn't do a bunch of different sports, I wouldn't have learned how to shoot in different lighting or different situations and stuff. But I just think like there were some shots where I knew like all right, this is good. Like I got to keep on doing this. And there's some shots where like nah, maybe not next time. Just a learning experience. But I also didn't have the gear back then, so that helps. But I just think photography, you have to start small and continue to grow, or else if you start too big, just like anything, like you're gonna get overwhelmed. But it's been a long journey, but it's been fun.
Good. And so you were saying, with as far as the equipment and kind of starting small, how did you start small? Like, what was your equipment back then compared to what you have now? And how did you make that progression from that starting point to now? And when did you kind of see, okay, this is what I'm starting with. This is the next piece I need to get. This is the next piece I need to get. Instead of, like you said, starting out with everything, 50 fancy lenses and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first I had to prove to my parents that I was serious about this before I could make a big purchase.
So how did you do that?
Yeah, I guess just long hours. Just really learning, just working on craft, learning from others was my biggest thing. The photography community is amazing. I learned so much from other people, like not even outside of gear, just how to work with people. But in terms of like gear wise, like how I slowly worked up was I had like a 500 Canon. Just I can't remember the name of it. I think everybody and their moms has it. But and then if you know a little bit about photography, I had a 70-300 lens, and the f-stop's around like it only goes down to 5, so you can't shoot in good lighting. But you almost have to start with bad gear because then that teaches you how to recover bad photos that are like bad lighting. You just learn the basics. But I used that setup for almost a year, pretty much, probably a little bit more. And then I was like, I really want to commit to this. I saved up money, upgraded from a 70-300 to 70-200 f-stop 2.8, which makes my job so much easier. If you talk to a lot of photographers, that's like I don't know, that's like the lens everybody wants. But and then I upgraded a body to Sony, which is a little bit of adjustment, but because I eventually want to get into videos, but I have a I'm very blessed to say I have a nice setup, but it's crazy to think that there's still more out there, and it's expensive, but it's worth the investment.
So as you were going through finding that equipment and as you were doing your shots with the original equipment you had, were you looking at it from a frame point of, okay, when I get that next level equipment, this is a shot I can take as you're looking over your projects?
Yeah, I think really seeing what other creators could do with that type of gear really inspired me to work for what I want. I feel like a lot of the shots I take are inspired by other people, not so much copying, but just seeing like the great work people can do if you have the right gear. And eventually, you get to a point where like I've learned the basics, and your gear can hold you back. Like if you're starting to get like in that year to 2 year range. But I just think being able to use your craft, it doesn't matter what type of gear. You can be a good photographer using any gear. Just you have to really hone in your craft and be creative.
You mentioned the photography community and you mentioned looking at other people's work. What were you looking at, who to kind of give you inspiration as far as going forward and doing this? Was there certain publications or certain teams or anything like that you saw that you were like, hey, that looks interesting and it might be something I want to pursue?
Yeah, I think Instagram was my biggest inspiration because it was a way I could connect or know people who were going to games before they knew me. So I knew I was prepared to connect with them. But I think for me, the biggest one was editing. I couldn't figure out my style. I was getting frustrated. And I just looked at the little things I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials. It's just like the little things that I can improve on. I was getting the good in-game shots. Like I was getting the good angles. I wasn't missing shots. But I guess just the editing part was frustrating. So I just looked at the little stuff that artists do.
So, and that's interesting because like you said, I kind of do the same thing. It's like you watch Instagram and you watch other people and like you said, you weren't copying it, but you're putting your own spin on it. How did you develop that putting your own spin on it as far as seeing what someone else had done and saying, maybe this is a shot in a basketball game, but I wonder if that shot would work in a soccer game or something like that?
Yeah, it's definitely trial and error. I think you're not going to find out if you don't try it though. So just having an open mind and trying everything that comes to mind, as long as it's not disrupting the game or hurting anybody. But yeah, you just got to have an open mind and try everything, because if you don't do something, you're going to regret it. But I think there's also something to be said about too much comparison with artists, because that's a big one too. Whereas like I would spend 2 hours scrolling on Instagram and I couldn't find I couldn't do it. So I just felt like I wasn't as good as an artist or photographer as others. So I think there's a healthy limit that you have to put on it when comparing anything really.
That's a good point, because I feel like if there's a picture you like and a picture I like, it doesn't necessarily mean one's better than the other. So how do you kind of like deal with that to say, this is my project, I'm happy with it, I like it? Do you almost have to say you don't care about what anybody else thinks, but kind of balance that to you do care, but you have to be careful how much credence you give that opinion?
Yeah, art is definitely subjective. But if you're like, I get like some people aren't gonna like something that I do, like with a basketball shoot or a baseball shoot or whatever. But I just think like you have to know the setting of like, what your project is. So for example, like, I was very, very grateful that I had the opportunity to pretty much have creative reign over the basketball team for like 3 years. So they really let me do whatever I wanted. It was amazing. I could use any style, anything. But if I get pictures or I get a job like more professional setting, like senior portraits, I can't necessarily just do whatever I want. You have to know what the client wants. And I think that just comes with communicating what they want. Like, do you want me to be creative or do you want me to keep it on the safer side, right? And I'm cool with whatever. It's just really about knowing your audience.
Yeah, exactly. So walk us through a project for when you're going out to, say, do a basketball game or a soccer game. What your thought process is going into it, how much research you may do about the teams involved. Kind of walk us through a project from, say, start to finish.
Yeah. Some shoots are really, really long, but I'll just take an example from a basketball game versus a day-long shoot. So basketball game days, I traveled with the team. So let's say it's an away game. Sophomores play at 5, varsity plays at 7. Got to be there at the school, ride the bus with them. That was a really cool experience. But I guess most of the work I do that you see on Instagram happens before I even get on the bus or get to the arena. Final graphics, for example, like if there's a final score, but that's made months in advance. So, and game day graphics are usually made like a week and a half before. But in terms of like research and stuff, like I was just very like involved in the high school basketball, so I knew a lot about the teams. Like this is a high ranked matchup. I gotta have a big graphics ready for this. Or if it's like a tournament or a game at a neutral court, I usually like to mix it up. But most of my work happens before the game. But just going back to my basketball, I'll shoot first halftime. I'll go and edit some photos just in case they win, because then I'll post pictures from first and second half after the game in case they win. Shoot second half, and then I'll make the win graphic, just update, put the score in, and then post the pictures. So that's what a day game is, or just a night game. It's not too crazy. Like I said, a lot of the work, I make it easier on myself putting the work before. But when it's a day long shoot, it's very long. Like I just had one yesterday with a basketball camp. It was really fun, but they're long days, and you definitely have to be prepared. Just locking in and having the right mindset.
So when you have that basketball game, will you do any scouting of you obviously know the team you're with, but will you do any scouting of their opponent to maybe say, oh, hey, this kid is highly scouted, or this person, or that, just so you can kind of maybe involve them in your, in your picture pool?
I know they're good players, unless it's a sport I don't really know a lot about, but I usually only took pictures for one side. But as I graduated from Prairie and that stuff, I'm probably going to expand and shoot from both sides. But I've always really just stuck to the Prairie side, just because it's hard for me to put my pride aside and do that, especially since I'm working for the team. I don't care if they're a 5-star athlete. I can't. That probably even doesn't want me to take a picture of them. But
So you started doing the games. At what point did you kind of into it say, you know what, I feel like I'm starting to get a handle on this. I'm feeling confident in doing this, and what I'm producing is really, really good, which it really is. I mean, you talk about your graphics, just, I'll say it. I was so jealous of the boys team this year because their game day graphics and all that. And it's like, that's like taking a program to a next level. So when did you was there a time where you maybe took a step back and said, wow, I'm putting some really nice stuff together?
Well, I appreciate the comments. I definitely wish I could have done every sport, but it's just not possible with two hands. But I guess the point where well, first off, when you said confident, like it took me a while to become confident in my work. Like it was a while before I generally felt like, okay, I'm good at this. I can keep on going. And I still have my struggles with that. I think it's easy to lose confidence quickly if you mess something up in this industry and just in general. But my junior year was like really when I was like, okay, I can go somewhere with this. Winter of junior year was really big for me with the basketball team. Like, I know I talk about basketball, but they generally help me take my stuff to the next level. So I guess that's when I can pinpoint when I started taking it serious. And then ever since then, I just kept on doing what I'm doing, just haven't looked back. But
so what was that conversation like when the basketball team basically said, hey, here's our program, kind of do with it what you want? I mean, that had to be intimidating to start with, and maybe a lot of pressure on you to say, you've been given this blank canvas, but yet, still it's like, okay, here I go. What am I going to do? Where am I going to start? How did you start, like, once that was given to you? Kind of like building a plan of how you were going to do it?
I definitely think it's more freeing than pressure, because as an artist, there's nothing worse being told this is exactly how you should do it. Like, we don't want anything different, which is okay to have. I do appreciate guidelines at times, but it's just hard as an artist to stick to something that doesn't have your personal touch to it. But I just think like just trusting that your work is good enough, and knowing that people will support you. Even if they don't like your work all the time, they're still going to support you, still like your posts, reposts. But I just think being confident in yourself is the biggest thing.
Okay. You talked about the community, and you talked about being on Instagram and watching other people. I'm curious if some of the folks that maybe you watched and were impressed with their work, were you able to become were they able to be mentors to you? Or were you able to reach out and maybe start getting some feedback on your work through some of those connections?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely would not be here in this position without some of my mentors. For example, Laura Eckert, New Creation Photography. She took me under her wing was able to help me get paid for some of the work I was doing. So yeah, all my galleries go through her website. She's helped me tremendously. That's just one example of the amazing community. I've met so many people my age, 20 years, 30 years older, younger too. Like it's just such a wide range of people. You're gonna meet so many people who will help you, and most of the time if you DM, they respond, and that's so crazy and massive. But yeah, I just think like you have to talk to people in this industry because connections are everything, and most of the time people will be willing to help out. But
Okay, so how long have you had Civid Graphics, and kind of where are you at now, and what's the next step for you to take with what you're doing?
yeah, I actually hit my 4-year anniversary last month. I believe it's July 3rd. I should probably know that, but yeah, every single year I just keep on getting more and more great opportunities, and I'm extremely grateful. But next year, or the next 4 years, I'm going to be attending University of Iowa. I will be an assistant operations manager with the baseball team, actually. So I'm excited for that.
Nice.
But yeah, just continue doing what I do, but also expand my reach.
So you're going to University of Iowa. What are you hoping to study and develop that's going to help you there? Is there any particular areas where you're thinking to take your art into different areas that will help you with doing the like game day graphics and things like that?
Yeah, I think like there's like crazy network, especially for athletics in Iowa City. So I just think my biggest skill I want to develop is the business side of my business, is because like I have the art side. I'm still learning, obviously, but I feel like I have that fine tuned right now. But it's just about the business side where I'm not great at. So I guess just trying to learn how I can balance the two, and time management is another big one. It's something that I've learned to develop over the past couple of years, and obviously it's going to be harder to do in college, but just continuing to balance my time and prioritize what's important and what's not.
All right. So I think it's kind of interesting you say the business side of it. How are you going to work to make sure that, like you say, stay balanced, that you don't let like the business side overtake that artistic sides? Because there has to be a fine line there between, okay, I love it, this is my joy, but then you always hear about people, it became a job, and so that kind of took away some of the love of it. How are you going to make sure that doesn't happen, or is there things you're doing now to kind of make sure that love you had originally you still keep?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, sometimes like it does feel like a job, because it is a job because you're getting paid for it. But I still always love it, even if I absolutely hate the long hours. Sometimes it's absolutely worth it. But I just think I hit a point where it's like, okay, I'm spending so much hours on this and I'm not even getting paid for it. So I was like, I have to have a work-life balance. So I guess just taking time for yourself is the most important thing, because if you can't take care of yourself, then your work is going to suffer. So I just think being able to recognize when you're tired, or you just feel like you're at a block, because I'm not saying work hard, but part of working hard, I think, is knowing when to take a break and step away. And I'm still working on a lot of that, but yeah, I just think having that balance is so essential.
So do you have a dream project right now?
There's a lot of dream projects I have, but I guess my dream is to work for a professional sports team, whether that's graphics, photography, operations, just any way I can stay involved. I really love baseball, as I mentioned before, so maybe someday I'll be in the MLB. But yeah, like I guess any photographer's dream is to work with a name brand. So hopefully someday.
Okay, so you mentioned that, and you are seeing that social media and things like that are so important to any business, any team. How do you get into those roles? How do you think you'll be able to help out with that? And basically, it's almost as if the social media team is just as, if not more important than, say, the athletes on the field, because they basically are taking what's happening on the field and projecting that out into the public, of keeping your already fans satisfied, but almost generating new fans. So kind of, how do you see that developing for you, and as you look into moving your business forward?
I think it's only going to get bigger, because or social media is the best form, if not, I mean, word of mouth still has a lot of power, but social media is up there in the most powerful advertising right now, because you don't have to pay $1,000 for a billboard now. You can just make an Instagram account and it'll pop up on people's feed. So I think it's businesses are switching to that just because of how like financially how easy it is, but also it is so important. Even like as you said, as the athletes on an athletic field, I think like getting exposed to like being a part of like the basketball team. Like I might have not necessarily been playing basketball, but I was still a part of the program. So I just think people don't realize when it comes to like the social media and like the business side of stuff, like those people play such a bigger role, or not bigger, I shouldn't say, but like bigger role than you think on game day or in the off season. I mean, obviously the athletes have the priority, but really make the stuff run behind the scenes. And I guess working with a lot of teams really exposed me to how much work goes into stuff. But yeah, don't take your favorite team social media team for granted, because guarantee they put a lot of hours in.
Yeah, and I think what you're seeing even more so now is not just the teams, but each individual players are seeing, you can create a brand. It used to be you had to make it to the major leagues of your sport to be able to have that brand, but now you're seeing with social media, almost any age at any level can reach that status just through social media.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like NIL has changed that too. Like there's 5-star athletes who are hired and they're on like photographer and videographer, which is it's crazy like to think about that, because I couldn't have pictured that 5 years ago. But yeah, it's crazy.
Do you remember your first paid project? Like, what was that feeling like, and kind of how did it come about? And did it give you that validation that, hey, what I'm doing is good and people appreciate it?
Yeah, my first paid project, I believe, was a senior picture session. So I was nervous, like really nervous. I actually had my mom go with me. Shout out my mom. She's my assistant all the time. Well, not anymore. She used to. She used to follow me around and give me some tips. So it was nice to have a second set of eyes. But yeah,
Have you gotten too good to have her now? Is she just not at the level now? It's like,
no,
sorry, mom. Sorry,
I wouldn't
mom.
say that. I think I got a handle now, but
Okay.
yeah, she was always a second set of eyes. So I mean, that helped calm me a little bit. But yeah, I was nervous, but I think the feeling after was just amazing, knowing I could capture such a big moment in somebody's life. And there's no better feeling. There's no paycheck, no follower number, no viewer count that can beat the smile on people's face when they see a picture that you took. It's probably one of the best feelings.
That transition from sports to senior photos, and just kind of the change that has to go through your mind as you're changing from almost, it seems like on the sports side, you have no control because the game's just happening and you're reacting. Whereas with the senior photos, like you said, bar the person saying, I want this picture sitting on this rock with this in the background, you really kind of get to use more of your creative eye. So how do you make that transition?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I guess I never thought about how not in control you are in sports compared to much in control you are with senior pictures, which does add a little bit more pressure. But I love senior pictures. It's up there, if not my favorite thing to shoot with sports, just because the connection you can make with your clients is beats absolutely nothing. But it's definitely more slow pace. So if you make a mistake, you can correct it quickly. Whereas sports, you can't go back and take a picture of the touchdown.
Yeah. Can we retake that corner kick?
Yeah. But it's definitely easier to correct mistakes, which does take the pressure off. Like I said, you build relationships pretty easily through senior pictures. And it's a good way to show my creativity. A part of building a connection with your client is making them feel open to share ideas they have. There's a lot of ideas that I didn't even come up with. Moms or dads came up with this pose, and we tried it, and it turned out really well. So it's definitely a different environment, but it's an environment I absolutely love.
So is that a talent you've always had? Because as an artist, you're going to go in with maybe some, you said, as you build that relationship with your client for those senior photos, but then being able to have that openness for someone to come in and say, hey, I think I want to try this. Is that something you've always had, or is it something that you've had to kind of develop as you've gotten more work with the senior photos?
Yeah, it's definitely something I didn't have to start. I was so shy. I would be scared to talk to anybody. I was actually pre-K because I couldn't really talk to anybody. So it's definitely a skill I learned through athletics, then up to being an artist, and then to high school. It just gets easier with repetition. You just have to be yourself. Like you can't fake anything. You just have to be your personality, make people feel comfortable. So you can't like boss them around. just really communicating up. I like to communicate with clients like where I'm at in the editing process. I like to touch base with them. So I feel like it's just a skill you learn like with anything over time through repetition. But
So you're going to school, you're going to university. What's the next step for Civid Graphics, and what's the next step for yourself?
I haven't quite figured out what my next step is with Civid Graphics. I'm taking the fall, take senior pictures throughout the fall, seeing how I can balance that with schoolwork. It's definitely not going to be easy, but it's a good way for me to continue taking pictures and make some cash. But I guess like just seeing what my workload is and just continuing doing what I can do. I've had a lot of people ask me if I'm coming back to Prairie next year, and I hope to come back eventually, but I'm not. I'm not gonna know.
He's big time now.
Yeah, but I feel like I've like built a connection or a network. So like if somebody needs to come shoot this game, hopefully I'll be free to do that. But it's just really what my schedule allows and what jobs I continue to get. So yeah, I guess just taking it day by day and just seeing what comes at me.
You it kind of when I say going forward, to go on that a little bit, have you thought that maybe you could be a mentor to somebody else? Like how would you're in that position of just a relatively short time ago, you were just starting, but now there might be, there could be somebody, and I'm sure, especially at the school, that have seen your work. Have you thought about that role? Have you thought about maybe, someone with Civid Graphics that would do something like that? I'm kind of curious, like you were in that role, but now someone could actually be looking at you and reaching out to you. Yeah. So how do you approach that? How would you approach it? And kind of what would you do with that?
Yeah, I really hope there's somebody 4 or 5 years younger than me who's looking at my stuff and just hoping that they can do the same thing, because I hope I'm inspiring people to be an artist and do what they want. But obviously, like I'm very young in the industry, and some people I've worked for 10 plus years, and I'm just getting started. And I still feel like I'm not qualified yet to give people tips or give them advice, but I try to help out if people ask questions. But I hope to someday be a big help to somebody and inspire them, because that's honestly one of my biggest goals is make people feel like they can do this thing, or make people feel like they can be involved with sports, even that if that's not playing on the field or court or whatever.
And I think that's a good point that you make, because like we were talking about before we started recording, like you said, you may never score a touchdown, win a medal at, Drake relays, or, score the winning shot. But what you bring to the school community with your photography, I think is just, fantastic.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for the kind words and just thank Prairie as a whole, because their community has brought me in and made the work so much easier for me. Because it didn't feel like a job. Everybody was so welcoming, and I'm grateful for the teachers who have helped me. I'm grateful for the coaches who have allowed me to give free reign and come to games and shoot. That's a tough one. You got me there, Rod.
Because I
feel like I haven't reached unk status yet, so I don't know, like I don't have words of wisdom.
You were talking about earlier, like, oh, I don't know, I haven't been in it very long. Yeah. I think you're selling yourself short. A long time ago when I worked with an older gentleman. I was younger, and he had been in the business longer than me. And he said to me, Rod, just remember, time and job does not equal job knowledge. And I've always kept that to heart, of just because somebody has been doing something 20, 30 years doesn't necessarily mean they know everything or they're the best at everything. I've definitely seen you grinding and putting the work in. So I think you could tell first date a lot, about, but and I just think you see that work ethic, and I think that's why you have been successful. But I also think that's why the community gravitated to you. It's because they see you at a basketball game, they see you at a soccer game, and doing all the hustle. It's been fun for me to watch your development through Instagram of the pictures, and you can see yourself.
Yeah, that. And I guess if I could tell Dade one more thing, or when I was younger, one thing, it would be just to take the risk. Failure is your greatest teacher, as a lot of people say. Risk.
But yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
The drawing stopped when I was like 5 or 6 or 7. That's kind of what sparked the creative side. Patient. But yeah.
That's good. Well, Dade, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you coming on years. So I wish you much success. And how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, well, appreciate you having me on the podcast. I'm gonna miss running on the track, doing track workouts, and seeing you in my Civid Graphics shirt. That got me through a lot of hard workouts, trust me.
I know. I should have worn it today. I forgot to put it on. I should have to pump it up. But how can people reach out to you? Social media, things like that.
Social media is the best way. Instagram, DMs. I believe I have my phone number on my portfolio or my website. So yeah, reach out, phone, Instagram, call, email, really anything. Oh, that's you're comfortable with, because I'm glued to my technology. So I try not to miss anything, but yeah.
So what's going to be your next big tech purchase? What do you got your eye on?
Well, a lot of my money is going into college right now, but there is
So if Santa were to leave something under the tree, what would you hope it would be?
Probably either I have a Sony A7 III right now. Probably the upgraded Sony A7 or the FX30, which is like really, really fancy video camera, or 20 to 70 f2.8 is a lens. So a lot of money, but that's gonna have to be spaced out. I'm not gonna be able to buy that at one time. But
we could tell young Dade, save all your money, because one day you're gonna need better.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Civid Graphics and Instagram, check it out. I mean, it is really fun to scroll through his pictures and just see his progression as an artist, as a creator. Also, when you look at it, you have to realize his graphics. You're like, I'm looking at a high school program. That's what always got me, was like, this is a high school program that's looking like any professional team I've seen out there, with their game day graphics, support, and things like that. So Dade, thank you for joining me, and continued success. Good luck in school. And I know we'll be seeing your work and your creativity for a long time to come. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody, that's the Skive Off Podcast. My name's Rod Hullaby. Again, check us out on Spotify, Apple, and our YouTube channel. Check us out on Instagram at Skive Off Podcast. That's SKIVEOFF Podcast. And we'll see you again next time.